Good evening and welcome. I am Uyai Anieka and come to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. This is Spotlight Africa, brought to you by Spectrum Television and Planet Radio. Today on Spotlight Africa, Niger recalls its ambassador to Ivory Coast. Ghana opposition warned president on Niger troop plans. United Arab Emirates denies sending weapons to Sudan. At least 5 migrants dead off Tunisia coast, plus 12 life sentences for South African sex offenders have been handed out. These stories are all just ahead on Spotlight Africa. Do stay with us. First in Spotlight Africa is an update from Niger, where coup leaders have recalled their country's ambassador in Ivory Coast, saying comments by the Ivorian president had amounted to praising armed action against the Bazoum reinstated on his return from a regional summit last week. He had also said a military operation to restore democracy in Niger should start as soon as possible. He said Ivory Coast would contribute between 850 and 1,100 troops alongside Nigeria and Benin. It will be recalled that the West African regional bloc ECOWAS has reaffirmed its preference for a diplomatic resolution, but says military intervention against Bazoum for high treason. Meanwhile, Niger coup leaders have vowed to prosecute ousted President Mohamed Bazoum for alleged treason and security risk in the West African country. This was made known in a statement by the junta's spokesperson, Colonel Major Amadou Abdouben, read on national television. Abdouben said the ousted president would be prosecuted for high treason and undermining the internal and external security of Niger. The junta spokesperson also said there was misinformation campaign against the putschist to derail any negotiated solution to the crisis in order to justify military intervention in the name of ECOWAS. Recall that the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, imposed sanctions on Niger in response to the coup and has not ruled out using force against the army officers who toppled democratically elected Bazoum on the 26th of July. In a related development, the West African regional bloc ECOWAS has condemned the push by Niger's military junta to bring treason charges against ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. The junta took power about 3 weeks ago, keeping Bazoum in detention in the process. The bloc said the move represents yet another form of provocation and contradicts the reported willingness of the military authorities in the Republic of Niger to restore constitutional order through peaceful means. It added that Bazoum is the democratically elected president of Niger. Meanwhile, still in Niger, the new Niger Prime Minister Ali Mohamed Zine today in an interview said Niger will be able to thwart sanctions imposed by West African bloc ECOWAS in response to last month's coup. The Economic Community of West African States imposed sanctions on Niger following the coup and has not ruled out using force against the army officers who toppled democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum on the 26th of July. The bloc has severed financial transactions and electricity supplies and closed borders with landlocked Niger, blocking much-needed imports to one of the world's poorest countries. Meanwhile, the military leaders earlier said the sanctions had made it difficult for people to access medicine, food and electricity, describing the measures as illegal, inhumane and humiliating. But Zien also expressed optimism about the visit by a Nigerian delegation and talks with ECOWAS and stressed the importance of Niger's ties with Nigeria as well as the West African bloc. In the meantime, the African Union AU has said that it has held a meeting today on the crisis in Niger following the coup on the 26th of July that toppled President Mohamed Bazoum. The Pan-African body said AU's Peace and Security Council met to receive an update on the evolution of the situation in Niger and the efforts to address it. The meeting, which took place at the AU headquarters in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa, had in its ECOWAS. Moving away from Niger stories, in Ghana, lawmakers have expressed concern over ECOWAS plans to potentially launch military action in Niger as part of efforts to restore constitutional order in the country. The lawmakers are demanding Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo to immediately stop all preparatory mobilization towards deploying Ghanaian soldiers. The country's minority lawmakers, as resources of the state, should be directed at resolving the country's economic challenges following a $3 billion International Monetary Fund (IMF) bailout rather than getting entangled in a proxy geopolitical confrontation. Away from that, the United Arab Emirates UAE has denied a report claiming weapons were found in its aid shipment to refugees of the Sudan war, arguing it does not take sides in the conflict. According to conservative estimates by the armed conflict vying for power has killed at least 3,900 people. UAE Foreign Ministry Communications Director Afra Al-Hameli said the UAE has not supplied arms and ammunition to any of the warring parties in Sudan since the outbreak of the conflict. Moving now to South Africa, where the Johannesburg High Court has imposed 12 life sentences on Gerhard Ackman, a serial offender who was found guilty of committing multiple sex crimes against children in South Africa. Judge Mohammed Ismail of the Johannesburg Court, however, ruled that the 12 life sentences would run concurrently. In April, the court found Ackman guilty of attempted murder and several sexual offenses against minors who were mainly young boys. Reports say some of the sexual offenses the court found Ackman guilty of included rape, human trafficking, sexual grooming of minors, and production, possession, and distribution of child pornography. Meanwhile, Ackman is still on in 2018. Still in South Africa, the man who murdered South Africa's former First Lady, Marieke de Klerk, is set to be released on parole at the end of August. Luyanda Masumwa, who was 21 years old when he committed the crime, worked as a security guard at the former First Lady's apartment block. De Klerk, who was 64 years old, was stabbed and strangled in her Cape Town home in December of 2001. Mbosinwa also stole a mobile phone, gold watch and money, then was arrested 2 days after the crime. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for murder and another life term for robbery with aggravating circumstances in May of 2003. Now, according to Prisons Department spokesperson Shikembako Nzumalo, 20 years on, he has since been considered for parole placement, having served the minimum required time, and will be admitted into the system of community corrections, whereby he is expected to comply with specific set of parole conditions for the rest of his natural life. Marieke de Klerk was South Africa's first lady between 1989 and 1994. Her husband, Frederick William de Klerk, was the country's last president on the apartheid rule. Their marriage ended in 1996. Meanwhile, worshippers at the South African church run by controversial Malawian preacher Shepherd Bushiri were robbed during an overnight vigil at the weekend. Members of the Enlightened Christian Gathering ECG in South Africa's northeastern region of Mpumalanga told police that 3 robbers armed with handguns raided the church while they waited for other worshippers to join the cards. They also stole a white car belonging to one of the members but abandoned it 17 kilometers away. Police said the robbers demanded the PIN numbers for the churchgoers' bank cards before making their escape. Mpumalanga's head of police said that the forces had begun investigations into the incident. Uganda cancels fraudulent Thanks for staying tuned, and now to the rest of the news stories around Africa. In Tanzania, police have arrested a lawyer and an opposition politician, accusing them of incitement and planning to organize nationwide protest aimed at bringing down the government. Boniface Ayashile, Mwabukushi and Makluka Nyali have both denied wrongdoing through a lawyer. According between Tanzania and an Emirati company were arrested or threatened. Meanwhile, the deal has been criticized by activists, citizens and opposition politicians who see it as Tanzania's government selling off their country, but the government denies this. In a separate development, the United Nations peacekeeping mission in Mali, MINUSMA, has said it brought forward its withdrawal from the northern town of Bear due to deteriorating security conditions. In a statement on X, it urged all concerned parties to refrain from any actions that could further complicate the operation, but it later said that its withdrawing convoy had been attacked twice, with 3 injured people evacuated to Timbuktu for treatment. The United Nations further noted Burma said that at least 7 of its soldiers had been killed and 8 others injured in clashes with former rebels under the coordination of movements of Aswad CMA. In a rather sad development, an Ethiopian army drone has bombed protesters, killing dozens of people. The privately owned Ethiopian Media Services reports that at least 70 people were killed. However, Amharic estimates that figure is lower. Hospitals airstrikes are reportedly hit the demonstrators who had gathered in the town of Finoti, Salam in protest against plans by federal forces to enter the area. The army and a militia group called Fano have been involved in heavy clashes across the Amhara region. In a related development, Ethiopia's lower house of parliament has approved the state of emergency declared in connection with the ongoing violence in the country's Amhara region. The cabinet had announced the emergency measure earlier this month. The parliament session unusually was not televised, but according to a report posted on the House's Facebook page, the decree was approved with a majority vote. Meanwhile, rights groups have already expressed concerns over the decree as previous state of emergency declarations had led to accusations of abuses and mass detentions. Meanwhile, the authorities in Tunisia say at least 5 migrants have died and 7 others are missing after their boat sank off the coast. Now, according to reports, the vessel heading for Europe was carrying about 35 people, mostly Tunisian nationals, including women and children. 23 passengers have been rescued. The boat capsized shortly after settling sail for Sidi Mansour near Sfax, which has emerged this year as a key hub for migrants hoping to reach Europe by boat. Moving away from that, Zambia's anti-money laundering and drug trafficking body has seized close to $6 million in cash at the main airport in the capital, Lusaka. Also seized were 5 pistols, 7 magazines, 126 rounds of ammunition, 602 pieces of suspected gold weighing about 127 kilograms, and equipment used for measuring gold. According to the body's Director General Nathan Banda, the Drug Enforcement Commission (DEC) received the tip-off that a chartered aircraft carrying dangerous goods had landed at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport on Sunday evening. In a press statement, the Commission had since seized the Global Express T7WW on which the above items were found and another aircraft belonging to a local airline who makes it King Air B190. The 10 suspects, including a Zambian, have been detained awaiting has cancelled more than 7,680 fraudulent applications by foreigners posing as Ugandans. It comes a week after Uganda's Citizenship and Immigration Control Agency, DCIC, announced that it had confiscated 10,000 IDs that had been fraudulently acquired by foreigners. Simon Mundeyi, the spokesperson for the Uganda's Internal Affairs Ministry, last week said that there had been a rise in foreigners mainly from Kenya, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Sudan, Eritrea, Ugandan passports. Lastly, in Spotlight Africa today, Algeria has banned the American film Barbie, which has been showing in cinemas locally for weeks. The authorities say the film, which was released last month, goes against Algeria's moral values. Reports say the film promotes homosexuality and other Western deviances, and that it does not comply with Algeria's religious and cultural beliefs. Meanwhile, the Barbie film has already surpassed the $1 billion mark after its 21 July premiere. Some other countries, including Lebanon and Kuwait, have banned the film on grounds of morality. And that's all we have for you today. This has been Spotlight Africa, brought to you by Spectrum Television and Planet Radio. Do well to follow us across all social media platforms, all of which you can find on our website, SpectrumTv.ng. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow Planet Radio at planetradio.ng. I am Uyai Anyekan. Thanks for being a part of this and do enjoy the rest of your evening.